these are the supplies I used for today's project: scissors, 2 colors of fabric, coordinating thread, little rosettes, and a needle. Okay, here I am just cutting the first fabric to size. I decided to use the black for the mane just because Kensington really loves to lay on black things. So what I'm doing is cutting it into a perfect square, 21 inches by 21 inches. Here I'm cutting the accent color that's used on the sides. I did 21 inches long so that it would be the same as the top and 5 inches high. And now I'm just laying out the pieces to make sure everything fits properly. Now the fabric that I chose is the same on both sides, so it didn't really matter how I placed it together to sew. If you're using a fabric that's printed on only one side, you would want the printed sides to be facing each other. A little fun fact for you about fleece is that it stretches when you pull on it. So what happened when I was sewing the first side piece on, I was pulling it a little too hard from the back side, so it stretched the fabric. In turn, that meant that the side pieces that I had cut didn't exactly match up. They were just a little bit too short at that point. So I had to compensate a little bit around the corners and make them a little bit more rounded than I wanted to, rather than the sharp pointed edge, but that's okay, it ended up working out anyways. Next, you would just sew on each of the 4 sides to the top piece of the main fabric. Okay, now once you have all 4 of the side pieces sewn on, you can start sewing on the bottom piece. Again, if you got a fabric that's printed on only one side, make sure you pay close attention to how you're laying out the fabric before you start sewing it together. Now I'm sewing together the first of the 4 corners. Please do not ask me why I'm frowning so much this whole time. By now I think you get the idea. I'm just going to go ahead and continue the same process on the rest of the corners and 2 of the other sides, leaving one side open to put in the stuffing. Okay, now I have something that closely resembles a really huge empty pillowcase. So now I'm just turning it right side out and pushing out all the corners to prepare for stuffing. The stuffing I'm using is from Hobby Lobby. It was $3 or $4. It's called polyester fiber fill, and I'm literally using the whole bag and just shoving it in there with no real rhyme or reason. What is that? Okay, whatever. Once all the stuffing was in, I had to sew it by hand to close up that opening. Let me tell you, it looks like a 4-year-old sewed this together. It's closed, that's all that matters. That will be the back side. Okay, about 100,000 years later, and it is finally closed. So now I get to do the fun little bit, and here's a little story for you. Whenever I was a little girl, my Grammy used to make all of us girls dresses for birthdays and Christmas. We had 1,000 homemade dresses from our Grammy, and in each one, she would sew on the inside a little tiny rosette. And I just look back and think so fondly of those dresses and that tiny rosette. So I decided in this little pillow that I was making for my baby Kensington that I would add my own little rosette. Let me just tell you though that I had absolutely no idea how difficult these were to sew on. I have a newfound respect for my Grammy and her sewing skills. Please teach me your ways. This is the finished product. Kensington still isn't really all that sure about it. He won't lay on it yet. Time will tell. I think he's really going to love it though, and $5 says he'll try and chew that rosette off.